Hey everybody, the ghost of 2015 here. It's me. 2020 me felt so bad about ditching me in the last episode that he said I could introduce and host this episode. So here we go. What's been happening in the world of our model trains? I don't know. I've been busy on the ethereal plane, but according to a list of things he has here, the first thing it looks like is he's got some video talking about where we live. I don't know why. Maybe he was planning something, some video about behind the scenes. I don't know. I'm just going to put this on here. If you wanted to know anything about us, we have a wife, Joyce, 3 kids, all college graduates. Our oldest daughter is married, and otherwise, why would you care about anything like that? But here's a video of our house for some reason. I'll let 2020 me try to explain it. Alright, it's a Sunday morning about 9:30, and this is our little house that my wife Joyce and I have lived in since 1993, raised our 3 kids here. All 3 of our kids graduated college, and our oldest got married in 2012. But this is where we grew up, where our kids grew up. Quite different from the crappy neighborhood where I grew up, so it was always very nice. I don't know if you can see, but my wife Joyce is doing her morning watering over there. It's been adventurous last few months. New roof, brand new roof put on in late February, I think it was. New window put in this week. We had to replace this window and one on the side. Eventually we'll get to all of them. But by American standards, it's a small house. It's what they call a starter home. It was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath. The entire upstairs was an attic, which would have been a great train room, I suppose, but it was turned into a 3rd bedroom, which is where my wife and I are. But this is a pretty middle spring morning, and thought I'd show you the house. Sadly, this is our once beautiful Bavarian pine that has got a disease and is going to have to come down. Kind of sad. Alright, when we come around from where I was filming back there, come around and see our little backyard. This is the shed we put up in November so we can move some things out of our garage into there, so we had a little more room in the garage. And our deck. And Perry the cat. Technically he's my son's cat, but he's adopted to the whole family now. Say hi, Perry. Where I often have breakfast if the weather's nice. But this is our little yard and our little berry garden. We grow raspberries, strawberries, and blueberries. And I also used to grow grapes, and I used to have 3 massive grapevines behind the garage, but I tore them out last year, decided I wasn't getting any grapes. All the local critters were eating them before I could harvest them. And then we come around the side of the house where, again, it's hard to see in the shade, but I'll try to zoom in here. We have our tomato and bean garden. We grow our tomatoes and beans. We used to grow a lot more, but that's because I used to have a big vegetable garden back here, but we took it out to put the shed in, and we were having some issues with some of the foods we grow, the lettuce and the corn not coming in properly the last few years, so we just kind of stopped doing it. So we decided to, because we needed a shed as well, we put the shed back there, and moved the tomatoes and beans, hoping they'll grow better over here. But that is a look at our house. You go inside our little entrance here, and that's the kitchen, then down to the train room. Okay, well, it looks a bit different than it did when I was alive, but it's a nice house. Anyhow, so what's on the docket today in our world of model trains? Well, apparently, it's something about a Fowler car system. Now, in 2015, I didn't know anything about a Fowler car system, but I did watch his previous video, even though he made it without me, because I got all kinds of time on the ethereal plane. Anyhow, so he seems to have run into some problems, so I've been trying to inspire him, being the artistic side, the yin to his yang. But, so he's got a couple of videos here of some of the problems he's run into and some of the problems I've managed to solve for him and get him on his way. He seemed pretty pleased with the solutions that I inspired him with. And so let's look at those. All right. So after posting my last video about having some tricky issues with the Fowler car system with the pre-bedded roads, because I'm too lazy and don't trust myself trying to plaster the roads in with my various hand issues, I finally came up with an idea. Now, the hang-up I had is that the buses actually come completely around. They will drive around. There's a big circle the buses take around the station, and I wanted to recreate that. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized I really couldn't do that. And this is all test fitted, so don't worry too much. So I came up with the idea of a crosshair. And so if you remember, or if not, traffic flows this way. It's one way. It's one way on this road, but the bus terminal is one way this way. So rather than try to create a full circle around where the buses actually would run around and then pull in, I got rid of that idea. I just figured I'd have them pull in. So buses on this one-way street this way can come around the curve here, and there will be a turnout motor here. I just placed some track. I need to get one of their left-hand motor turnouts here, and these buses will come in here. They will pull in here because this is the direction the buses go. They will pull out. Whoops. They will pull out and then curve back into the traffic flow this way. So they'll come around this way to get back onto this lane. The buses that travel this way would come around here, and there will be an entrance here where they would come up and go this way and then pull in and stop. So there will be another little S curve, a little crossover. The roads will cross here just like they do down there, and I got space to cut this back enough to fit it in. So they would come in right here and S curve. So there'll be a little S curve here, and then they can pull in. They would go along, pull in the bus terminal here, stop, then pull out and come this way, and then follow this crossover back into this traffic. So I think that's the solution. So I can have the buses do just laps around this part, and then using the Fowler car stop or turn motors, I can have them pull into the bus station and stop, pick up passengers. It'll always be the same two stops, this one here, but hey, I think it'll still look cool. Okay, so
It's about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks since I made the last video where I showed the Fowler car. You'll see some bits are missing here, but there's bits up at that end, which I'll explain because I'm actually taking pieces out, wiring them, gluing them all together and wiring them because I have to put this together in sections. And then I'm going to try to use the zoom here best I can. So pardon that. That's about as close as I'll get. So I laid out. I'm still going to have to make some custom pieces, but I finally, yesterday, the last pieces I needed came in. So I test fit everything and designed a couple of custom pieces I have to make, and I think it's going to work. I still have to put lines in, then I have to paint it. Actually, I have to skim coat it, then paint it. But there is one problem that I always have to solve, and I'll take you over to my workbench real quick and show it to you. So, back in a flash. Okay, here's the problem. If you buy the Fowler track system to go with the Fowler car system, they only make right-hand turnouts that are motorized to divert traffic. They don't do any left. Now, technically they do a left. They have a wide intersection set up they build for left-hand turns. But I guess because you only expect to have off-ramps to the right, they didn't bother making it. And the problem is my bus design, because of traffic flow, needs left-hand turnouts. Now, Fowler does make left-hand turnouts, but as you can see, they don't have a pre-cut, pre-measured hole. So technically, I need this piece as a right hand, and I need this piece as a left hand. So how do I go about doing that? Well, I take these two pieces, and I'll just show you real quick. I line up the main square pieces, not the connecting pieces, and I trace a hole. I'm not going to do this with the camera on, it's too much for me. But I would trace that hole there. And then what I did is once that hole is traced on there, I created a little wooden jig, and you can see one's already here. And so first thing I did is I have a 1-inch boring bit for some of my home projects, and I drilled out the 1-inch hole because that's exactly the size of this. This is a 2.5 centimeter or 1-inch diameter hole. But then if you look real close, you can see there's a 1 millimeter ridge, and there's about a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch bit here where this little wire directional cap sits, which you then mount the motor to. And again, I'm not putting this in straight because I'm looking at it, but this cap, and they needed sanded down a little, fits in there, and then the motor connects in here, and the motor would then switch the traffic to have the car go straight or take the turnoff. So again, I needed that to a left hand. So what I did was I marked the hole, and then I created a jig here. And on this jig, I just then take my 1 1 1/8 boring bit, and I drilled down 1 millimeter. Now I'm eyeballing it. It's not like I have a way of depth measuring in this case, but by setting it up on this jig where I have a pre-centered hole that I could set it in, then, you know, because these drill bits come with the little bit, come with a little drill on top of them. So like there's the 1-inch hole, so you see that fits in nicely. And then the 1/8, which is currently connected to the drill, so I won't bother running over and getting that, bringing it in, allows me to drill down, sand down in here enough to sit the cap in. So this cap would fit, oops, right in there, just like that. and then I connect the motor from the bottom, and voila, I have an ability to have a motorized left-hand turnout. These little marks here I have to carve out because that's where the little pegs, whoops, let's get this in camera, where the little pegs, focus, are you going to focus? Come on, you can do it. There you go. You can see the little pegs on the piece here. That's where the motor connects on the bottom and from under the table. So that is how I made left-hand jigs. I've been custom making other pieces, and I'll show you how I did some of that in a separate review. Okay, so everything is wired, the motors are in. Unfortunately, I can't show it all off yet because it needs a powering system, which I don't have. And there's some little things on here that I'll take off. Obviously, I'm going to have to sand it and paint it, but at least you can see my red bus is going around. I will be converting that body into one of these bodies here. I'll be taking this shell off and fitting it on there. Unfortunately, even though it's the same company, a German model car company called Ritze. This is a Ritze shell, this is a Ritze shell and chassis. And so you're supposed to be able to interchange them, but this is an older model and Ritze changed the way the shell fits on. So there's a slight difference in size and connection. So I'm going to have to modify it and figure out the best way to get it to adhere. But you can see the buses running around. And I'm trying to take all these other buses off so I can show you what would happen. Since I don't have it motorized and don't know when I'm going to get it motorized, everything's wired. I just need a 16-volt AC power supply. But if you can remember the traffic flow system I created, and the problems I was having with it from the previous couple of videos. I have a motor here, which when you activate it, will divert the bus. So I'm going to actually catch it here, and whoops. And that's the problem. They're very sticky here, but if I catch the line, he'll come into the bus, and then there's a bus loop here. There is a turn and a stop, and he'll pull into here. And then he comes right back up here and exits onto the main traffic flow. Conversely, the other buses could run here because you can program which bus to go where. He will run, catch here, and again we have a stop. So when it's all activated, he would pull in here and stop, then swing out, and then he exits down here and goes back in the traffic flow. So I'd have two buses that I could have pulling in and out either way. I'll have two buses. I might go up to three. But I think two will work, and then maybe have a couple of cars, like this is a Fowler car. Problem is, this guy has such a low profile. Until I sand this all down, he struggles a little bit on some of the bits of the road. And these cars would just travel normal circuits around. So, like right here, I got a little bump that I have to sand down. The tape was just there to hold a couple of things in place and keep the wheels from sticking in the hole. But the littler car struggles with a couple of those bits. Now, originally, I was not thinking of doing any automated traffic. Just let the cars roll and the buses pull in. But since I've already got the basics to start wiring it, I might go with automated. I'm not going to buy the expensive traffic control system for this, but I am going to buy the... Whoops. See, he hits this bump here and he follows the... He definitely follows the other curve instead of the one he should. He's a little more sensitive to it. The bus handles it perfectly. but I will be making adjustments here before I paint it, because as difficult as this was, and it wasn't too difficult, but I tend to do things backwards, as I always do, because I say this is what I want to do, and then halfway through I decide I want to do something more or different. That's why it takes so long to build these. These I knew exactly what I wanted to do. The bus terminal and the train station, I knew exactly what I wanted to do here. It was getting there, and how I was going to get there, that was the problem. But with the Fowler car system, I knew what I wanted, or thought I did. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. Okay, so a little bit more. He now seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern, but he did have one more video to share. So let's look at that. A little bit more about the Fowler car system and the prefab track. Again, I showed you this before. You get track that's pre-grooved, you get straights, curves, and a couple of specialty pieces. And there's a groove here, and all you do is fit the line into the groove, and then they tell you use a flathead screwdriver to smooth it out. I find a flathead screwdriver, at least if you're me, where you use a little too much force trying to make sure the wire goes into the groove, I find a flathead screwdriver to be more damaging. So what I like to do is take a flat side of a scrap. This was a curve, but this is a flat side. And I will put glue in the base. Now they tell you don't have to use glue. I use glue just to hold it in place. And then I just use, I'll set this down here. As you see, this is one of the issues I have with the Fowler car system, is the grooves are not really set quite deep enough. So I'll put the glue, and then I can get rid of that, and then I'll use a piece of spare 3mm balsa, which is basically what this is, and I'll push it in. Now when you have a bent end, that's a little more difficult to work with. You have to keep pushing it. That's why I like to use a super glue with a fast grab, because then I'll just run this along, and it also screeds off any excess glue, and you'll hold it in place. Now I didn't glue this, so this will probably keep bouncing out, but gradually, if you keep pushing, it will stay in. And then the car, the magnet on the bottom of the car, the magnetic ski, will follow along that. So that's the basics. Now again, one of the problems is when you go around curves, this wire has a very strong tensile memory, and it takes a little bit of coercion, and again, that's why I use glue, and you just kind of follow along and bend, but it takes a little bit more hold, and if you can look behind me right here, it's already popping back out of the curve. They don't like curving very much, so again, the super glue does a nice job of holding it in and convincing it to follow the groove you want it to, and it will bite real fast, and then gradually you can let up and it'll follow the curve. But sometimes if you're using the track system, you have to create a specialty piece, and that involves making a groove. Now what I do is, if it's a straight piece and I built my own piece of wood, now I'm doing a quick demo, not the measuring and everything else, but for $150 they charge you for a groove making piece. I have this, which you can probably buy for, oh, I don't know, somewhere around $5, $8, whatever. This is a roller for putting mesh in screens. Use the little rubber strip you put in. So depending on the width of the strip, you use, I don't know if that'll see, it's got a wider end for fatter rubberized strips when you're putting mesh wiring in, but it's also got more of a pizza cutter end, and I use that. And if it's a straight, it's relatively easy. I will just go along with this, and it saves about $145. Oops. Got to make sure you're, see, this is why I don't work on camera. I go off if I'm focusing. And I can just press this along enough that I create a groove for the wire. Now, obviously, I was screwing around and watching the camera and not watching what I was doing, but you can see I put a groove in there. Again, I wasn't trying to measure this and do it. I'm just taking a spare piece and demonstrate it on the back, but that's what you do. Curves a little trickier. I'll usually cut the curves with a utility knife of some kind, just to create a groove, and then I will slowly go through it and try to follow along the curve that I pre-grooved with the knife. Again, you draw a line using protractors or whatever curved device you have. Fortunately, I've got 3 kids that are into all sorts of arts and crafts, and they have all the different curve wheels available, so usually I can find the one I need. But that is how my that's how I adjust the Fowler car system. Alright, so that seems to be the updates on the Fowler car system. So, just a couple last things I'd like to talk about on the show, some changes that we're discussing making. Alright guys, I need it quiet so I can make a new Model Train Outsider episode. Anyhow, we'll talk about that some other time. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in tonight on the Model Train Outsider, and I hope to see you soon. What are you doing? I'm making this video. You ditched me for the last one? I came down and made my own. No, all I have to do is go over here and hit upload, and it's too late. Sorry. Don't you dare. Paybacks. Son of a...